You're listening to Pro Booth Talk, education and insights for photo booth company owners.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Jason. With me always is Lap. How are you doing?
Hi, Jason. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, so we wanted to continue on the staffing podcast, 3 or 4 episode continuance, whatever we want to call that. We're going to touch on training today. So I know that Lap's training is super structured.
But you share your training, Jason.
So Lap just mentioned to me that she doesn't really have any kind of structure, so I was putting her on the spot. But that's great because I think a lot of people don't have a structured training. So I think it's that's why we have 2 hosts on here, so we can see different viewpoints and whatnot. So once we hire people ourselves, and I've actually done a couple different kinds of training over the course of my growth. Maybe I'll start with what we used to do, which I really thought was a good method when we had 2 people on every event. So essentially, once we hired somebody, we would just assign them to a person that obviously was one of our better staff members, and they were just assigned to that person all the time. They went with them on every single event, and they trained with them, and they saw what they did. Eventually, they took over, and the other person kind of would just watch what they're doing, and they would just be a team essentially until we hired our next person, and then that trainee would get the next trainee, so that you go straight from learning to teaching, and that newest trainee would always be with that last person that was training until they were ready to train the next person. And it was just an ongoing cycle, and they would just always be with that person until we hired the next person. I really like that because you always had a continuing hiring process. You always had a place for people to go, and there was a certain level of consistency to training. If one person is with that same person over and over and over again, then chances are when they move on, that they will be doing things very closely to how that person did everything. So obviously things will kind of vary over time, but there's more consistency. Ever since we moved to a 1 person per event model, we're not able to do that as much. So what we do now is do a basic training in the office. People come in, we go through a setup with them, explain the setup, and then tear it down for them, and then basically tell them, we just leave them in the office and say, okay, now you set it up and tear it down. We're not watching over your shoulder. Take your time, try and remember. If you have any questions, let us know. And then we do maybe 40 minutes. I guess it's something that companies called orientation. Essentially, it's just sitting at a table and chatting and talking about policies and what we expect and things like that. And then they still go out and train with people for about 5 events, but we don't have them with the same person every time anymore. So we essentially just put them with whatever kiosk they're learning, which we always have people learn on a DSLR kiosk first, Windows-based DSLR kiosk first, because that is our primary tool that we use. So it's essential that everyone knows that, and they go out and essentially any job that has that kiosk, that has someone that's worked with us for at least 20 events or something, we'll just throw them with that person. So with that, each trainee going from each person back and forth to whoever's working the next event, obviously it's not as consistent. Everyone has their own way to kind of do things, and we lose a lot of the consistency that is important. But that's where we're at right now. I would like to move into a system where we have some videos to help train, and for people to go back to and reference to help hopefully rebuild some of that consistency that we've lost. So there's a set solid way that you do it every single time, and any time somebody sways from that, we could point them back and say, let's revisit that training video. And I know there's even softwares out there where you can do a training video and then have some questions, and they have to answer the questions and pass. It'll give them a rating and a whatnot, and let them know if they passed or if they need to do it again. But I've never looked into anything like that as well. But that is the basics of our training. And then, of course, when they're on site, they learn on the site on during the event of who to talk to and where we're setting up and the basics of setup. Like when we're training in the office, it's purely just setting up the equipment. As far as like the gaff tape and how far to be from the backdrop, that's all the things that they're learning during those first 5 events when they're training with somebody. Then once they are done with those 5 events, we ask them if they're ready to go solo. And we do something called a test out, which is actually the 5th event. So they do 4, and then we do the test out. In the test out, essentially, someone goes with them and just doesn't do anything at all. Like they're just there in case there's an emergency. That person just completely has a meltdown. Typically, they'll just like hang out in their car. They're not even inside the venue. And once they finish the test out, then they are good to go on their own. We've never had an issue that, like, we may just drop the test out because we've never had the person that is testing someone out be needed. And if we ask someone if they're ready to test out, sometimes people say, no, I need a couple more events, and that's fine. We don't ever rush people through. If they need more training, then we want them to be confident and prepared. So we're fine with them doing extra training events. But I mean, as a basic structure, that's what we do. So you say that you don't have a structure, but surely you're doing something that is structured from new hire to new hire.
Yeah, I basically do the same thing as you. I just never thought of it as being structured. So when we bring on team members, we essentially put them out on a live event, 1 to 2 events, see how they do. After, when they're on site, they shadow someone who's been with us for one of the team members that has been with us for a long time. They know the system, so they walk them through, setting it up, going through the software. So it's more informal on the site. And then I schedule in a formal like group training where I gather, the entire team together, and so this helps with like staff that has been with us for a while as well, with the new hires, where we together go through all the systems. The ones that are new, I'll have them set up the photo booth, break it down, set it up. They do it for like 4 or 5 sessions. We talk about it again, like what they might still have questions about. So we have multiple booths, so each one will be assigned to a booth, and they'll break it down, set it up, break it down. And then we'll revisit. And then, any questions they have, I'll have the other team members like jump in, and that helps. I feel like training, when you train someone else, it helps you remember a lot and retain more as well. A lot of the information that, so that works really well for me. And then we send them out to events. I don't have the structure of like 4 or 5 events where they're shadowing. They basically shadow someone and I just check in every so often, like, how are you feeling? Are you comfortable? But really when I send them out, it's always like, okay, have the new team members set up, have them run through, and then, try not to jump in unless they have a question about, the back end or anything like that. So I try to get them assimilated into that as quick as possible. But I feel like because of the stuff that we do, a lot of it is more complex, a lot of the programming, and we jump from event to event. So we jump from like Windows-based DSLR cameras to iPad based. So it makes it a little bit hard because we don't really do volume like some companies do. So it makes it a little bit harder because of all the niche services. Like we go from like a photographer to Windows to iPad to Roamer. So it's harder to have that structure of like, okay, you guys are going to do 4 events and then we're going to let you go. So I kind of get a feel for them on where their comfort level is. And also, because we have remote assist, I use TeamViewer. So even though I'm not actively at most of our events, I'm always remote at all of our events. So it's, the tech support is always provided by me. It's something that I want to move away from, but I struggle with that. But that's basically how I get people trained on board. Gaffing the same as you, like that's stuff that we train on site. But they get like a general training, like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of group training once they've done like 1 or 2 events. But the biggest thing for me is like, they have to show that they have the ability to like be fast thinkers. Like no amount of training, I feel like, will prepare them for just them being able to like stay calm in the midst of like the storm of an event, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
being able to like manage the client, as well as like focus on following directions for the tech support. Cause I think some people do panic. That's one of those things where I can't gauge that. Like sending one person, because we're the same as you. Like when we first started this podcast, Jason, I was like, yeah, I sent 2 people. Now I'm sending 1, and for new staff, I don't know if they can handle. I feel like shadowing someone is a comfort level for them, for new staff. So I'm
Yeah,
not
for
totally
sure.
comfortable with like, yeah, so I'm not totally comfortable like sending new staff to run an event solo yet, even when they say they can, because you don't know who is gonna like freeze up when there's tech issues. Some people I notice struggle with that.
Yeah, and that's I guess something I don't remember if I mentioned it in our last one about interviewing, but one of my favorite interview questions or answers, I guess, when I ask people how they are at thinking on their feet or if how comfortable they are in the Windows operating system or something like that. Anytime someone answers with a question like, "I know how to use YouTube," like, or "I know how to use Google," that is
Yeah,
just a problem solver answer, and that I love
yeah.
hearing that. It's like
But
I, I feel like I could like perform brain surgery tomorrow if I had a YouTube open next to me. You know, obviously, uh, that's not accurate, but you know, anyone that's able to use those problem solving skills to just find the
yeah,
answer. I don't expect you to remember every kind of issue that you're going to run into, but if you can problem solve, then
yeah. No, but I'm seeing where like it's not even that they don't have the knowledge. Like my team members, you know, they all have, most of them have been trained on a lot of the troubleshooting and they know how to troubleshoot, but there's some individuals where like when something does go wrong, even though they know how to troubleshoot it, just the panic takes over and they freeze up. That is something that I don't even know how to overcome. I don't know if you've seen
mm-hmm.
that with any, where it's not even lack of knowledge, it's just they panic and just shut down.
Yeah, panic under pressure. I've had some people that are like that, and so uh, I had one person in particular that was exactly like that, and they would call in for tech support and instantly go straight to, "Can you just come out here? Can you just come out
Yeah,
here and do it?" And always it's like, "Hey, this is just something that's really simple. It happens all the time. You just need to step back, breathe for a second,"
take a deep
and it
breath.
was
Yes.
impossible. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
have different hosts. We're structured in a way. We've got like a host level 1, which host level 1 can never work solo, essentially. Like either they can't stand the pressure of troubleshooting, or maybe they don't have their own car, or maybe, you know, whatever the issue is, they're not comfortable working alone. Whatever it is, their host level 1 never works alone, so they will just be doing albums, or they will be on mosaic jobs, or jobs that require 2 people, 360 jobs, etc. And then our host level 2 is essentially where most trainees start at. Most people just skip over that host level 1, because the only difference with host level 1 is they're not expected to use their own vehicles. They're not expected to man the setup or be responsible for anything. They're just an extra person. Then the host level 2 is where people are starting. That means they can do like the basic equipment, and then we have people hopefully aspire to become a host level 3, which is knowing like pretty much 80% of our equipment, and most equipment. Like if you have a new like if you're doing basic photo booth setups, but then you want to switch over to, I don't know, headshots with using photo booth equipment, generally you can send one of your host level 3s, even if they've never done it before, because they know how to do all the setups, and you could just send like a
Right.
one sheet of like different changes or different camera settings or whatnot, and they could figure those things out, so they don't need an extra training. And then
Yeah.
for the people that, then we've also got a lead level 1 and lead level 2, and those are people who essentially don't need any tech support ever. Like we can have them come into the office and act as tech support. They know how to use the software. They know the backside of things. They can just troubleshoot like 95% of anything that they need to. And the host level 2 for us is essentially like, "Hey, I just bought this new unique item that we've never done before. I can send you out on event today with it." So they typically don't exist. They're generally the people that are starting their own photo booth companies. They're the UNIs of the world, would be lead level 2s. We do have one that is very close, that that I could pretty much give them anything, and if I give them an extra 30 minutes, they'll figure it out. But
That's amazing.
yeah, they're a rare breed for sure. But when you find them, I want to make sure that they have a higher pay structure and get compensated more and whatnot, so they can stick with us. But we try to get everyone to host level 3.
Yeah.
I don't really worry too much about the leads. But back to topics. So let's see, consistency and quality. How do you manage that as you expand? That's like one of the hardest things about hiring staff for the first time is you've got to understand that you're going to lose some degree of quality to expand, because no one's ever going to care as much as you, of course.
How do you approach that, Jason?
Photos. When people set up, we have somebody send a photo of the output and a photo of the setup, and we don't shy away from critiquing if something, like you mentioned, I think in the last episode, if someone doesn't have straight gaff tape, don't sugarcoat it. Don't say, next time just pay more attention to the gaff tape. Like, make them redo it. Make them pull all the tape up. Make them redo it right then, and they'll remember. So that's really all that we're able to do. And then as far as the output, we will poke in a couple times during the night and just make sure, because a lot of times, you'll have a big group and they'll push the backdrop back sometimes. And sometimes when you're on site, you lose sight of those things because you're interacting with everybody. You're not looking at the screen all the time. You don't notice that the backdrop is just a hair out of off the side of the screen or whatnot. So we'll just pop in every, I don't know, maybe twice during the night and just make sure the framing's still good. But as far as quality control, that's all we do.
Yeah, quality control for me, I mean, I make sure that when the team is on site, I get setup shots. I make sure that, the gaffing is I always bring up gaff and all this stuff, but like gaff, like I don't downplay how important it is, making sure everything's lined up proper. I also talk about like lining up the photo booth with the architecture. So like the space of the room. I want to make sure things are centered if possible. Like if they could hide behind, if there's a window to the side, I don't want the window being half cut off. Things like that. I try to teach the team to factor in pillars and stuff like that. The biggest thing is, I think with quality, I think just embedding into your team, like just planting that seed in your team that it's not like, I try not to focus so much on all the different things about like lighting and things like that. I focus my message more on it's a team effort. So all of us make the company what it is. All of us make this brand what it is. So when one person drops the ball, it impacts the entire team. It impacts our opportunity. It impacts like, our growth, so that they understand that every person, from, it doesn't matter if you're new, it doesn't matter if you're seasoned, we all impact the growth of this company and the opportunity that we have, because it takes one small thing to lose a client and multiple events with that client. So I try to stress like it is a team effort. Like we all work together to build this company. We all work together to open opportunity for us. So I think once like I talk to them about that and stress the importance of that, I think that kind of them taking ownership makes the bigger, I feel like that has a bigger impact. But of course, like I look at, I check in and all of our images are live uploaded to Dropbox. So I monitor the output. I try to get them to understand like framing and the importance of framing and making sure every shot is composed properly, depending on like how many guests. So, don't just set the camera and leave it. Like we are that company that zooms in, zooms out for groups, photos, and, adjust the camera. Yeah. Do not hesitate to make those adjustments, because that's the difference between what we provide versus what everybody. So just stressing like the company's vision and goals, constantly like pounding that into them. Like we are who we are because of who we are individually and what we bring to the team. So everybody on the team has a huge impact, like how they present themselves, how they interact with clients, what they're wearing, all that is part of our branding. So every person, no matter how small it is a big part of the company's growth. So they all feel responsible for it. I think that's probably the biggest. And we've talked about this before, because I know you do a lot of team building. That's a big part of like the training, which sounds weird, but it's like embedding into them, like, you are such a big factor in this company, because we are not like a big box company. We're a small, we're a small company. So everything you do has a huge, you can't just slide in and pretend to fill the day or pretend to work at the event.
Right.
And I think that it's not going to impact all of us, because you showing up and not putting in your all means that we're not going to win the amount of events that we need to win from that client, and that impacts the entire team's financial situation. I mean, like,
Right. Yeah. You've got to be
you
there.
are
You've got to be
impacting.
present. You've got to be engaging.
Yes. This is
And-
not the kind of job where you can just slide through and pretend to fill your day,
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
goes back to the last episode of interviewing, because I mean that's really what like, that's untrainable things. Like you've just got to make sure you're hiring people that are engaging and outgoing and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up framing, because that's something that we really focus on as well, and I think it's really important, and not enough companies do that. Too many companies just set the camera up with the backdrop and just leave it all night. Just press the button and repeat. And we as well, like you mentioned, we are framing almost every single photo, depending on if it's a
Yeah.
group shot or two people kissing, or little kids and have to point down, whatever it is.
Or like the logo being huge on the side. Like, we make sure that our staff knows like where that
Yes.
logo is, so you don't physically see it. To
Yeah,
try
so
to
you can just tell
avoid-
people to move their head over a little bit, just
Yeah.
because it's going to be caught behind the
Yeah.
logo, little things like that.
Yeah. Small
And
things.
it's important to, like, if you have a kiosk where it's difficult to do that, then your staff won't go that extra mile. They'll start out doing that, but you have to make it easy for them to realize what your goals are. If it's really hard for them to zoom in or move the camera up and down, they're only going to do it when they have a big group and they absolutely have to, and someone's asking, like, is there any way to get it any wider? So with our old kiosks, well, our window-based kiosks, we use Lumias and Marquees, and we have like a lever. I'm not really sure what it's called, but it's like a strap that goes around the camera barrel, and it has a lever that comes off, so that our staff doesn't
Talking
have to
about the
like
zoomer?
manually. Yes, so
Are you
it's
talking
it's
about
like
the
a
zoomer that
zoom.
Min sells?
No, it's a lever. It comes off the side, so you just have to go in and manually grab the lever and go up or down, and it moves the barrel
Oh,
to
on the
zoom
side
in
of
and
the photo
out.
booth. Oh,
It's not on. It's on the inside, and
oh,
then
okay.
the head of those ones go up and down, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about the Min booth. So Min did create those. What did you say? What
Knobs.
they're actually called?
They're knobs that are
The
levers.
zoomers. Well,
Oh,
the
yeah, the
zoomers
zoomers,
themselves,
so-
with he 3D prints those to go on different cameras. Unfortunately, they don't fit in the Marquee or the Lumia, or I would use those on those. But I do use them on the Min booth, and they're fantastic, because now you don't have to go inside
Yeah.
the booth at all. You just right on the front. They're little handles that stick out, and they're very super convenient. Also on the exterior of the Min booth, you can there's a little knob that you can loosen and move the camera up and down really easily. And
Yes.
those are just some of the small little things that are on these booths that people don't shop for when they're looking at booths, that are just
Yes.
so valuable in
bring
the
that up,
day to day.
Yeah. I bring that up all the time about why I love the Min boosts that we have, because it's those small things that you don't realize when you're shopping until you're on site, just how convenient it is. And even though it's small, we're talking about like framing the shot, zooming in and out, those things sound so small and not a huge deal, but when you look at the output, it is like day and night between like what we provide versus someone who just sets the camera and forgets it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I know that there's companies that do that, but they're going to be in a different market and targeting a different type of clientele than the type of clientele we market to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mentioned like an orientation or policy review. Do you have any like structured, like written down handbooks or whatever with policies, or how do you handle that?
So I go through an orientation like that as well. I don't really have like anything written down, but the team knows like what the expectations are in terms of like dress code and how they're behaving, how they're interacting with clients. That's a huge part of what we do. Like client interaction and management is a huge part of it. So making sure that you are, communicating a certain way. I think though there's always going to be situations where something comes up and someone drops the ball and you just revisit it with them, then stress. This is the reason why we stand where we do with dress code or behavior, things that aren't acceptable, like drinking on the job is definitely, and that's it. I bring it up because clients love like our team. So, people walk up, oh, have a shot with me. And, you just have to keep stressing like we can't do this because of this. And they have to understand, like, I'm not one of those people who just like throws rules at people. Like, I want people to understand exactly the reasoning and the basis on why does gaff matter that it's taped, that it's straight, why does it matter that, we have a drink on site or not, when I was a smaller DIY company, I didn't understand it, but now I understand like the liabilities and just, you do not want to be in a situation that, you can't go. Once you start growing, you start doing these type of high profile events, like you understand the repercussions of things like that. And maybe your staff just needs to understand that for them to really abide by those.
Yeah, and drinking seems to be an ongoing, and maybe it's because of the party environment, and even a lot of other vendors, like you'll see DJs taking shots, and even photographers and things like that. And the wedding planners will sometimes participate in the toast with their clients and things like that. So I think people see it happening all the time, so they just feel like it's okay. I even had a BA that we hired once who asked me if it was an open bar, and of course, that was his last question. We went ahead and told him we had enough people on site, so we got rid of him. But so concerning policies, we used to have I don't know, it was 1 or 2 sheets that we just kind of read through this during the orientation process. I've currently been I started using a knowledge base on my website on the back end for the staff to access, and we're currently like trying to just pack that with everything. So the first thing we added to that was policies and positions and pay structures and bonuses and how all that works. And then we started adding setup guides for each of our kiosks and troubleshooting. So the first step, if you're having some kind of issue, the first step on site is for them to go to this knowledge base and do a search and see if they can just quickly see a solution. And if they can't do that, then they'll call in. So we're actively trying to really pump like our entire company into this knowledge base right now. So we've got all our policies in there.
Have you found success with that, or?
The knowledge base I'm really liking, and we have had success of referencing people to it. But as far as using it as a troubleshooting tool, we have not. We don't have any troubleshooting in there yet. That's like 2 phases away from everything that we're adding in here. But we did start using photo booth support, and we have not had success with that yet. People really don't like change, and there's like we're having a hard time getting them to call them instead of us, because we want to be the secondary support system.
Right.
But we just met with our support team yesterday and told them in the future, quit helping them. Like if they call, ask, did you call photo booth support yet? And if the answer is no, don't even send them away. Just say, no problem, let's call them together right now, and just call on 3-way, just so you can like hold their hand and walk them through it, and hopefully that will help. So we're still trying to do that. But I'll read through our policies real quick, just to give I'm not going to read all of the content, but just to give an insight of some of the policies that people should be addressing. And certainly if people have policies that I'm missing, let me know, because I want a complete list here. So we cover smoking and vaping. We list our primary mission in there for them to refer back to. You mentioned dress code. We've got, of course, a dress code policy as well. Reliability, tardiness, and missing shifts. Cell phone use. Maintaining a clean and organized workspace, and eating and drinking. And then we recently added lifting heavy objects and injury protocols, which I think we'll probably do an episode about, because I am currently going through a staff injury and worker compensation and whatnot, and 10 and a half years, it's the first time we've done that. And there's certainly a learning curve to that. So once that's over with, I'm continuing to take notes. I'll come back and we'll do an episode and I'll go over my experience with dealing with an employee injury and insurance and whatnot. So definitely, though, one thing you don't need to wait for that I can tell you right away, have an injury protocol. Like something that people know about that they could reference, because that was the first issue when they reached out to me and they're like, so what is your staff supposed to do when they get injured? And I answered, and they asked, like, where is that posted? Like, show me that they know that. So definitely have some kind of injury policy protocol on your website that staff has access to. It will help you. So let's see, where were we at here?
I used to have a troubleshooting sheet when I first brought on team members. I had a thorough one. Basically, it was just me going through. I had a whole I had documentation attached to the booth on like the setup, how to troubleshoot the printer, things like that. And it was on note cards in a booklet that was attached to the photo booth. And I just found that people struggled with like reading through the index cards and searching for it.
That's why the knowledge base is so useful, because it's on your website. So as long as they have internet access, if they go to the knowledge, that has a really, really intuitive search feature. So if they search a code that they're getting on an error code that is on their screen, or printer with the kiosk, it'll pull up every article. So there's no like flipping through, or you just search and you can see the 3 articles that pertain exactly to that topic. And then hopefully, if you remove that heavy lifting of searching and flipping through note cards, hopefully it gets more use. But I mean, I think probably our most common issue is hot shoes. They always come off, and with as often as they come off, you would think that every staff member knows that that's the issue. But if they just type in hot shoe and we have a quick, like 2-sentence summary about how to put the hot shoe back on, and also a video showing them how to, I would hope that would save, a couple calls a month from the hot shoe issue.
You know what I get calls about, honestly, and it always cracks me up, is like after a whole bunch of troubleshooting, we check all the cables, we check the hot shoe, we check the camera, ends up someone unplugged us or someone tripped over the power. That is very, very common one.
Tripped over the power? What?
Yeah, like we have like
aren't you the gaff tape queen? Didn't you check their gaff tape? How do you trip over the power?
People, right. So we've had people, this is in the past, but we've had people unplug us to charge their phones.
Oh, I've had that too. Incredible.
We've had where, the extension cord that winds, where someone stepped on like the little latch that powers it on and off.
Oh yeah.
We've had the power, like access to power. And that's the reason why we make sure that we stress like we want power within 20 feet. But that one always cracks me up. Like, or someone like plugged in everything, but they forgot to plug in that last plug for the printer. So you
plugged in everything, but didn't plug into the wall.
Yeah. You troubleshoot with them for half an hour while it's not printing, and you're like, wait a minute, did you check the plug to the wall? Oh no, we forgot that part. And I understand there's so many moving parts, it's happened to me too. But that's one that's very common, and I think that's the reason why I kind of lean away from like resources like having them trouble. It just because I've done it so long, and when they jump on the phone with me and they I know what questions to ask and what to look for. So I'm able to source the issue a lot quicker than if and I know I should lean away from that, but like my only goal is just like get us up and back and running as quick as possible. And usually it's because I've been doing this so long, like I usually can source the issue just by the questions I'm asking,
Yeah, 100%. If we're live at an event and there's an issue, call in and get it solved immediately. But most troubleshooting happens in the time during setup when, and that's why we have like an extra hour in case there is any issues. And if you have an hour before your go time, then you need to be looking up and learning how to fix those problems yourself before you're calling us. Because, if it's a busy Saturday and we have, 15 events out, and we have 5
Right.
people calling during setup, because most jobs start at the same time.
Around the same time.
Yeah, it's very hard for our tech support to be handling, even 3 calls at the same time, or even 2 calls at the same time. Especially if there's something very easy that they can just look in a troubleshooting guide and just fix that themselves. Then that's very important. But I agree with you. If like the event is live, the number one goal is to be operational, and you go to the absolute fastest tool for that, which is calling somebody, for sure. So we're in agreement. I just went to where was I at? Minneapolis for a job, and it was one of the first jobs I've worked in quite a while. So I was there, and I couldn't get the lighting right. Like, the photos were so dark, and I'm like adjusting the flash, and it's not doing anything. So then I go to camera settings, and I'm adjusting the ISO, and it's blowing my mind. Like, I'm like you. I've been doing this long enough that I'm very quick to diagnose an issue. So it was probably like 12 minutes that I fumbled around with this and printing things, and I'm just getting more and more irritated. And it ended up, do you want to take a guess? Do you know what it was?
It's a webcam. It was connected to the webcam.
No, it was the DSLR. I didn't take the cover off the flash.
On video. Oh, what? Oh, yeah, that happened.
So sometimes it's those little things that you just...
The little cat, yeah.
So that, of course, the adjusting the brightness of the flash didn't matter if the flash was covered. And you still see like a flash happening, so it's on and operational, but it's those little things you overlook sometimes when you have so many things in your head, and but the video, that has gotten us a couple times too, because oftentimes I'll forget about that video setting and how dark it will be. So,
yes. Yeah. It's always the small stuff that you miss.
Yep, and sometimes the most obvious, of course. So you don't use any, as far as training, any manuals or videos or anything like that?
We have a scheduling app called Connect Team that you can actually upload videos. If I feel like it's something that our team has not delivered very frequently. Like, I know when we first moved to iPad/DSLR, that was a little bit of a learning curve for some of the team members. I mean, we went through the formal training, but it's, because of the networking, things like that, it's a little bit more complex. Then I'll do one-off videos that I'll upload into Connect Team for the team members on site. I do really feel like this is something that I have to work on. I know that having those videos will be really helpful, especially for those setups like iPad setup. Like, you do those enough. I just haven't. I'm not gonna lie. I just haven't had focus. I haven't focused on that yet. I do know there's some companies that already have pre-made training videos, like Catalina. I forget who else has. There's a couple companies that, if you look, they do have training videos on stuff like that. I think on setting up.
Even like booth companies. I think, I may be wrong, but I think Moby Booth had one.
Yeah, they have. What's great is their Aura, because we have the iPad. So there's been. I'm not on site, and I have not used those iPad Auras very often. I just bought them, and we send them out with the team. They figured it out themselves. I did not realize that there was. Because when I bought mine, I didn't realize the light synced with, when the countdown. I did not know this. And the newer ones don't even have the latch in the back to control the light. So my team called, because like I said, I'm not an event. So my team called me and was like, how do I change the light? It's blue. I had no idea. I was like, okay, go to YouTube, because it's probably there. It was. Mike did a whole video on how to connect. And so, Moby is really great about like having training videos online. And
those are great. Share them with your staff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
We are currently in the process of making our own. I should look at the kiosk. We don't use Auras, or I would definitely use Mike's, but we need to see who has them and who doesn't, and we're going to make our own. Again, with that knowledge base, we're trying to get everything in there, so every setup for every system that we're doing, and hopefully it will streamline and make everything more consistent and whatnot in the future. But You mentioned communication. I wanted to touch on that a little bit. I think that kind of fits into the training a little bit. What we use for communication. So for scheduling, mention again what software you use.
I use Connect Team.
Connect
and it's really
Team.
great. It's free if you have under 10 on your team. And you can load a lot. It's not just a scheduling app. You have a chat app built into it. You also have the ability to upload things like video, site maps, any web links, things like that. So it's great because you assign people to those jobs and they have access to all the files that you're uploading in there. There's also a separate section for like if you want to create like training on the app, it has that. I just haven't utilized that. For anybody who's looking for like checking in inventory, checking out inventory, there's a whole section you can create like custom workflows where you can your team can like upload the photo of the equipment they're picking up, upload the equipment they're dropping off. It has geotagging for clocking in, clocking out. So it's a really great app. I just, I use it limited, but super powerful and free if you have under 10. This is not an ad for them. I just have been using the app for like, 4 years or so.
So ours is pretty similar. We use something called When I Work, and it sounds like a lot of the tools are the same. I'm not sure if it does. There's something you mentioned that I'm not sure, uploading videos and whatnot. So, but definitely like geotag clocking in and clocking out and things like that. So you can make sure that people are actually at the office when they're clocking in, or the warehouse or wherever people are picking things up from. There is a chat feature we tried to use for a while, but it didn't push out as well as I'd like, so we stopped using that for communication. You can assign staff levels, like you could tag someone with 360 and tag someone with whatever you want to tag them with, and then when you're looking to assign a job, you can filter it and say, okay, I only want people that are tagged with the 360 skills, right. So you know who has those skills, who you can assign. They can go in and say which days they can work, which days they can't work, which days they prefer to work. Yes. I know that some people schedule via like post a job and whoever grabs it first, and some people schedule in a way that is like they assign schedules. And it has the capabilities of doing both. You can just post a job and whoever grabs it, it'll be assigned to them. You can set it up so people have to accept jobs, so they are acknowledging that they received it. I'm pretty sure Boothbook, I don't use Boothbook, but I think they have something built in that does some of the same things, but I'm not very familiar with that, so I can't speak on that. But we use When I Work, and it's been phenomenal for us. There is a free version as well. I'm not sure how many staff members it can be. I think we only had 10 for a while, and we were paying, so I think it's less than 10, but I'm not sure. But also very good. So there's two valuable tools for anyone to look at if you are looking for scheduling your staff. And then for communication, we just have a WhatsApp group because it seems like more and more people are using WhatsApp. We used to use a Facebook, private Facebook group, but these young kids are just insulted that they have to get on Facebook. It's such an old person's tool. So, and then we got to a point where they're like, no, I'm not going to have a Facebook account. So we stopped using Facebook groups when people stopped using Facebook, but people haven't stopped using WhatsApp. It's just getting more and more popular. So we use that for team communication whenever we need to. So we do a kind of like a split. We do tell people to post what days they're available, and then when a job is posted, we just filter by who's available and just assign it to somebody. And we don't ask like who wants to work it. If you're available, we'll just assign it to you. Unless it's inside of 7 days, then we will post it and just say, hey, who's available for these days? Even if people have previously said they're available inside of a week, I feel like plans change. So we do kind of like a post and who wants to take it for that. We also work with BAs occasionally during our busy season, which is brand ambassadors typically used for like conferences and things, and we do use them for that as well. But we'll also use them for social events like weddings. obviously there'll always be the second person, like just working on albums or something like that. But when we get busy, I'd rather have our trained staff taking on more events than having someone that's trained to run a booth completing an album. So we also have a group of BAs that we've worked with in the past that we like, and we never assign them jobs. It's always post a job, and whoever claims it first gets that system for them. I think that kind of covers it for training. I'm sure we're missing some things, but collectively in all of these staffing podcasts, send us your questions and we'll do a final follow-up answering all the things that we missed. So
Yeah.
that's that. Happy training.
To keep the conversation going, join our Facebook group, Pro Booth Talk Community. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider showing your support by subscribing, liking, reviewing, or sharing this topic with someone in the industry.